Hello and welcome along to this week's EFL, where we're talking all things English Football League. Joining me, Jimmy, is Joe Townsend, remote record today. How you doing, Joseph?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. Yourself? How was your weekend with reduced EFL football?
It was
Is it all
good.
right?
It
Or are you
was
getting a bit cold turkey?
No, I really enjoy it. I really enjoy it. I said in my column ahead of the weekend, I think it's brilliant a reduced slate because you can just not that you don't try anyway, but it's so hard to be across every single fixture in England. It's a good opportunity to get stuck into the reduced teams that are playing. But my only gripe is I really don't think League One should be allowed to postpone games because of international call-ups. I was saying, I'm sure Duffman said as well. If you're going to be like really selfish and like be able to sign high quality international players, you should have to roll with the punches and suffer without them when they get inevitably called up for international duty. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, how dare League One have started
Yeah,
to sign better quality players in recent years? It's a disgrace, isn't it? Are they better quality players, or are people just manage? Are there more? Well, there are objectively more nations playing international football, so that definitely plays a part. And then loads of them are playing under 21s count now, don't they? That's a player being absent. Even under 20s, I think, do. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it, to be honest. I quite like the international break. You know, where there's jeopardy in the international fixtures. When there's not, then it is frustrating. You know, everything sits around your Saturday 3 p.m. So having so few League One games, 5 fixtures, it does hit hard. That. So yeah, I'd be on board with you. It'll be a good maybe 6, 7 seasons ago when Barnsley were promoted from League One under Daniel Stendel. They just made a decision at the start of the season that they weren't going to postpone any of their matches, no matter how many international call-ups they had, so that they could like make up ground on the direct opponents by never having any fixtures to catch up, and it worked in the end. They were about three fixtures ahead of Sunderland and somebody else with I think 6 weeks of the season left. And if Sunderland had won all the matches, they'd have caught Barnsley, but it catches up with you. Uh, so yeah, I'd be a fan of League One having a bit of a firmer stance over it. So it is a bit of a shame.
yeah, it is a bit of a shame. I was just looking, a couple of things to pick up. So you said there about just playing the games. We're cutting off top six in League One. You've got teams, Stevenage, for example, they've only played 13 times, Cardiff 14. Only one of the top six has played their 16 games, Lincoln, and they're tied first. So there's definitely a case to be made for just cracking on, as you say. But on the another point you just said then, um, jeopardy in the international football, I'm going to have to mention it. Troy Parrott, a few
Oh,
EFL loans, 5 goals this international break, accumulating in the most dramatic winner to secure the Republic of Ireland a spot in the playoffs, a chance to qualify for the World Cup in the summer. How good was that?
absolutely insane. I was actually out with my kids and my dad yesterday afternoon, and we were just following the game. I dropped him off at home, and think it was just 2-1 at that point, but we were like, well, it's all over in it because they had to score twice. And he phoned me like 20 minutes later to say that he just like had it on in the background. He couldn't believe it. Absolutely wild scenes for it to turn around. And at the moment, then that it's still a possibility for all 5 home nations to qualify for the World Cup. I mean, it's highly unlikely. And I'm stretching it, saying all like that the Republic of Ireland are a home nation, because I mean they're not. So I'm actually saying something factually wrong. But all home nations plus Republic of Ireland. So that would be pretty awesome, and it would definitely increase the likelihood of there being tons and tons of VFL players at the World Cup. Because apart from England and Scotland, really, because Scotland is in the main Premier League and Serie A players in their 11 now. But the rest of the countries, they've got a huge proportion of VFL players. So, yeah, yeah, from a patriotic standpoint, then I'm cheering on the British Isles, but it would be really cool to see like huge swathes of EFL players playing in the World Cup next year.
Yeah, and even you say England and Scotland have mainly Premier League players, but you look at England's lineup, like most of it from the 2-0 win at Albania, made in the EFL. Harry Kane had low spells, Eze tore it up for QPR, even Bellingham, obviously, Birmingham, Wharton at Blackburn, Bowen at Hull. So many players born and bred in the EFL. We should actually do something on that come the World Cup, perhaps. How many players ex EFL go into the World Cup? Current EFL, maybe something like that. Should we?
Yeah, definitely. I mean that 11 in particular, because I mean I had this chat with Tom fairly recently about I think it's a stretch, with the loan moves because so many players have had their loans, but that 11 that played against Albania, loads of them are genuinely like EFL Academy prospects. So EFL Academy producers. So like you go through it, John Stones, Dan Burn, Jude Bellingham, Adam Wharton, Jared Bowen, Abariche Eze, like all those players are EFL or non-league, which is absolutely outstanding to think that they've come up through the levels to be in an England starting 11, more than 50% of the starting lineup in a World Cup qualifier. It's crazy. You're just not going to see that in any other country's national teams. A team that is, at the moment, England are going into the World Cup as favourites for the first time since 1970, and they've got a huge proportion of their squad that were built outside of the Premier League at a time where the Premier League is more dominant than it's ever been. So yeah, it's a pretty cool time for the EFL, and you feel like they need people banging the drum for them a bit more than we're seeing at the moment, because it's constantly under pressure from the Premier League wanting to take more and more of the pie, which is insane, really.
Oh, it is a scandal. Even on the bench, Elliot Anderson had that loan spell at Bristol Rovers. Alex Scott, unused sub. Spence. It's just everywhere. It is really good. And even the likes of sort of players who came through the top academies, more often than not, I'm thinking Liam Delap off the top of my head. They come through an EFL academy and then they get plucked away at like under 15, 16 levels. So it is literally the lifeblood of the English national team, more so than ever. But I'm going to take us back to League One. There's a few stories from the Championship I'll save to the end because they're not as time sensitive. I want to get stuck into the reduced docket from the weekend in League One. 5 fixtures, 2-0 draws. Where do you want to start in League One? Because we may as well talk through them all with there being so few games.
I'll start with the Port Vale against Wickham. That I don't know if it's. I'm a bit annoyed with myself actually because that's 2 Port Vale games. That game and the home match with Northampton, which is 6 weeks ago or so. That as predictable and 0-0 as you'd find all season. I think it's maybe 4. I think I've got it noted down somewhere actually. Is it 4 0-0s already for Port Vale this season? Yeah, and they failed to score in 9 of their 16 matches in League One. And going all the way back to the summer, then when we were talking about Port Vale's prospects in League One and the recruitment they'd done, which looked pretty good, it just felt like it was going to be a major problem for them scoring enough goals. And it's proving to be the case. I mean, they are locked in a relegation battle. It breaks a run of 3 straight defeats for them, but they just have to find a way to start scoring goals. Otherwise, they're going back to League Two. There's just absolutely there's no way that they're so far behind everybody else except Northampton Town in terms of the ability to score goals at that level. And Wickham are inching their way up the table. That's, I think, 6 or 7 games unbeaten now. And Michael Duff is doing a terrific job getting them going, a proven operator at this level. No great surprise there. And Wickham had the better of the game. If anyone who's seen the highlights and seen the stats, that it's not one of those matches where Port Vale will be walking away from it feeling like they ought to have won. I know we went into this on the Thursday podcast that Vale are underperforming their XG more than any club in all professional divisions in England. I think they were the third in unexpected points before the weekend. But yeah, it's how many of those are high quality chances that they're missing, and a team's just sitting in behind now and letting them have the ball and take shots because they know that they're not creating great opportunities. So it's definitely a big worry for them. But it's easier said than done, isn't it? It's the hardest job in football is putting it in the net.
Yeah, they just need to sign like a 20, 25 goal a season, right?
No, yeah.
That's all they need. To be fair, I thought they had, maybe not to that extent, but Devante Cole, I thought it was the answer to that underperformance in front of goal. Obviously, they lost to Large early on in the season, but you've referenced some data points there. I've got the expected point table up here. That has them in fourth after the weekend, so they're 18 places below where the underlying data suggests they should be. They're underperforming their expected goals by over 10. They've conceded around 3.5 more than the quality of chances that they've been letting up suggests that they should have. So underperforming drastically attacking wise, slightly defensive wise. And according to both of those factors sort of merged together in an expected points tally, they should be around 12 points better off per foot mob. But you mentioned it there, and Duffman said when we were suggesting getting against them ahead of the ACCA on the weekend that they've actually been trailing for a huge proportion of their games, and that's going to skew the underlying data. You've touched on it about quality of chances, because if you look in their games individually, it's rare that they're actually creating big chances, and you'll know that when you're watching them week to week, because you can have, say, 10, 5, 8 shots all equating to a value of 0.15 or something, and that'll accumulate, and it might suggest that you've generated an expected goal on paper, but in reality you haven't really made any chances whatsoever. So yeah, that is a massive concern, and they came up against Wickham. For Port Vale second bottom on the form table, Wickham towards the top. Yeah, and as you said, Duff has come in and really cleaned Wickham up. So credit to them. And I'm not sure where you go from a Port Vale point of view, but I guess defensively at least, pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, so the biggest concern I'd have with Port Vale, and I was just checking my 1-24 prediction for the start of the season actually, because I was thinking,
Oh God, here he goes.
where did I write this? I mean, I had them to just stay up 20th place. That if there was, I mean, Darren Moore is such a likable guy, so you almost feel bad to be pointing out his glaring shortcomings as a manager. Then he's seems to have always been capable of doing a good job at a club when he's got the tools of one of the strongest squads in the division. When he hasn't had that, then he's tended to get relegated. It's pretty consistent and glaring. I mean, there's no middle ground either. It's continued to happen. So West Brom got the job there on an interim basis. Did get a little bit of an uptick, but he actually got sacked there when they were in the playoffs. Did all right. It all fell apart. They put Jimmy Shan in for a little bit, but West Brom, Doncaster, Sheffield Wednesday, and Port Vale. He's had them all promoted or right up towards the top end of the table, and he's had a really strong squad. But then the other way around, Huddersfield, he got sacked because they were down in the bottom three. They ultimately got relegated and was relegated with Sheffield Wednesday and Port Vale. And it just looks like it's happening again. Took over with Vale. Everybody thought he'd do great. Got given a 5-year contract, took them down, brought them back up. And he's good at organising a team, getting them kind of, defensively sound and relying on those attacking players. It's very Paul Warne vibes, to be honest. Doesn't seem to be able to develop a team to create and score goals if there aren't the high quality players in there. He's going to have to add that to his to his repertoire as a coach. Otherwise, Port Vale are probably getting relegated.
Yeah. On the flip side, same side of the coin, I guess. Like for all his tactical shortcomings, one of the main things about him, and you mentioned how likable he is, his pulling power. He does get players of quality for whatever level he's operating at. I think George Byer's been the main one in that squad. You've got Croasdale as well. Like he has got that pulling power, yeah. But definite issues, and this weekend they play Plymouth, which is a massive, massive game at the foot of the table. They host Plymouth. Just for context, as the league table loads, Plymouth prop up the division. They didn't play this weekend, 13 points. Game in hand on Port Vale, a point ahead of them and 2 places above them. Massive game at the foot of the table. I'll take.
I'd be absolutely staggered if this time next week one of those managers hasn't been sacked. Genuinely,
Yeah.
that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like to me. Do you know, for a game like that? I mean, a draw maybe, but how does it help either of them? We're going to get so many itchy trigger fingers now running up towards Christmas. They'll feel like the time's running out. We're basically a third of the way through the season, and the table's quite tight, but it will quickly open up. So I really wouldn't be surprised. I hope not.
Yeah, well, it is definitely sacking season, and say for example, if Port Vale do get a win, that at the minute Plymouth propping up the division, they're already 4 points from safety. Cleverly's been unlucky from an injury point of view, but it was a hiring decision that none of us were really convinced on at the start of the season, and yeah, they could find themselves 4 points adrift of safety come Sunday evening. Next game, Luton Rotherham. We may as well tick off both 0-0ers. And I just wanted to give some flowers to the Millers and Hampshire because they're now in the top half, 22 points, unbeaten in 6, perhaps even longer. Because I haven't got the entirety of their result. Was one of the rare exceptions where Luton had a few international call-ups, but the game went ahead anyway. Not least George Saville. He still is away with Northern Ireland, and I think they missed them. It was a game of few chances, but Rotherham turned up to the Kenny without a fit senior centre-back. I think it's Douglas filling in the middle of a back three for them. He's a central midfielder by trade. You got James and Rafferty as the other 2 centre backs. They also had Hugel and Sheriff up front. Both came off at half time, so I don't know the story with them two, but you suspect with how well they was playing in the first half that those 2 have got injuries. You've also got Sam Nombe, perhaps their best player. No disrespect to any of the other squad, but certainly in terms of market value and when he has been playing, how much of a difference he makes to that Miller side. He was a last minute. He didn't play. He's got to have a scan and that he could be out for a number of weeks now. But Rotherham continuing to pick up the results. It must be said, the underlying data paints a little bit of a fortunate picture with the Millers, but how much stock you want to put in that remains to be seen because at the end of the day, they've limited the anti-post favourites for the title to 3 shots on target, chances few and far between. So great credit to the Millers who now find themselves in the top half, but in the upcoming weeks with the injury issues piling up for Hampshire, I'm not sure if they can kick on. They've got Reading at the weekend, and I've got a habit now, Joe. It's good. It's good for me because there's only one car parking spot outside of our house. The other one you have to park outside the pub across the road. So what we'll do now, me and my missus, is we park outside the pub, we go into the pub while we order a takeaway on a Friday or Saturday, and then we'll make our way down to the house when the takeaways come in. But it's because Sheffield born and raised, but the house is just over the border into Rotherham, so the pub's always full of Rotherham fans. And seeing him at the weekend, they're all brimming with confidence. I've had a bet with somebody, £50. He fancies them to make it into the top 10. I just can't see it, but if they keep picking up results like they are, maybe it's just so tight in League One, isn't it? Maybe they could get into the top 10. It's just so clustered in the third tier, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a massive massive flip of a coin. I think you've just flipped a £50 coin over there in terms of whether you're going to win it or not. Yeah, the other side of that fixture then is another clean sheet for Luton. So while they've not won, then there's a good foundation that Jack Wilshere's putting in place. In terms of like charging up the table with a little bit of a run of form, then you look at Burton, they're a classic example of it. Even the run that Rotherham are on, both those sides were firmly down there in the relegation battle and on terrible runs. And you're thinking, where's the next win going to come? And Rotherham have done phenomenally well, especially when you consider that they were 2-0 up at home to Bradford on TV, and they threw that away late on to draw 2-2. And rather than feel sorry for themselves, they've actually used that strong performance to build on and go on the run that they've been on. And then Burton have been on pretty much a very similar run to Rotherham. So they're level on points now, 22 points, both of them 7 points clear of the drop zone, only 4 points outside the playoffs. And that's all it's taken this season. And I am really, really coming round to the idea that this is all going to be about like pacing your effort and who can be. I mean, it was the case last year, to be honest. Charlton were nowhere at this point. It was the beginning of December where they just got on that really, really hot run. And if managers can get a grip of their team by the turn of the year and make sure that they are coming in hot by April, then nobody's going to be out of it. I really struggled to pick a really poor team in League One this year. And equally, I really struggled to pick a really good team. Like Plymouth at bottom, and I watched them live on the opening day, and I've watched them like their highlights a few times, and I actually think there's a team there when they've got players back fit. Port Vale, I really don't think they're a terrible team. Everton, I kind of backed against them a couple of times and thinking, oh, I'm not sure, because when I've seen them, I thought they were pretty good, and then got stung because they have actually won. Blackpool is a good squad there. Burton have beaten them 1-0. They've got Everton charged now. That'll just take a bit of time. And then the other two results at the weekend, Leyton Orient beating Exeter 2-1 at home, Lincoln beating Doncaster 2-1 at home. They're two really good sides that I would struggle to split Orient and Lincoln, but Lincoln are second and Orient are 16th, which kind of sums up the madness of the division. And Doncaster are the complete flip side of this argument that we're making about the runs that Rotherham and Burton are on. They made a fabulous start, and now they haven't won in 2 months, and they're 3 points outside the relegation zone in 19th.
Yeah.
So I really do struggle to remember as madcap a League One as this. It's a good... I almost sent myself crazy actually going back through the tables. It'll be about two weeks ago or so when I mentioned to you that I genuinely could see, not because I've got anything against Stevenage, I could see Stevenage being relegated just because it's like 20 years ago where I was looking for, are there any examples of there's a team that was top of the league early in the season and there were teams right at the bottom and it almost became an upside down table. And it was 2005-06, I think. So it has happened before, and I really, really won't be shocked if we see this crazy up and down nature throughout the season. I've swept over the individualities of those remaining games, but it kind of was a League One in a microcosm this weekend.
Yeah, and you mentioned Stevenage. They're in 6th, didn't play at the weekend, but to your point, the expected points table has them in 20th. It was the same ahead of this weekend. There's still only 15 points between leaders Stockport and Basement Boys Plymouth, which is just unbelievably tight and just supports your point about, well, what we've touched on with Rotherham and Burton. A string of an unbeaten run of 6-7 games, and suddenly you can go from in the relegation zone to within touching distance of the top 6. On the flip side, Doncaster, as you said, winless in a few months now. They're only 2 points above the dotted line, and it does feel like from the weekend's fixtures, there's a couple of winners and there's a couple of losers. So the Burton game against Blackpool, They edged out Blackpool. Have you seen the goal? Jake Beasley with a beautiful glancing header, great ball in from Kyron Lofthouse. He took it really well against his former club. And the commentator on Soccer Saturday said it was a muted celebration in front of his former employers. But watching the goal, it wasn't. He was laughing in the
Oh,
faces of the
yeah,
crowd. He clearly
I
enjoyed that.
know. I know. I found that really, really bizarre. It was a proper celebration. Maybe it was a scripted line, just in case Jake. He was expecting Jake Beasley to be like, but yeah.
But yeah,
I'm not
Burton
for
do.
this muted celebration thing. Don't
No, me
believe in it.
neither. Me neither. And that definitely wasn't one. But now Burton have won 2 on the spin. They beat Bradford. Now they beat Blackpool. They beat Blackpool at the weekend. It was leading Rotherham 2-0. Had to settle for a point and 94th minute equaliser. Lost against Hemming and Burton. But before that, they beat Bolton 3-0. Drew at Doncaster. Beat Cardiff. These are great sides. They've only lost once since the end of September. That's a terrific run. And with a manager like Gary Bowyer, creates a team that is more than a sum of its parts. He did a terrific job towards the back end of last season. It's took them a bit of time. They're motoring up the division now. I think they'll be just fine. And yeah, he touched on Leyton Orient. They came from 1 goal down against Exeter. Very fortuitous equaliser in the way it fell to El Mizuni, and then even then he was 1-on-1 and it ricocheted back off the keeper and went into the net, but they got the job done. And as you say, it is weird because I don't know if it's just because they both begin with L, if they're sort of similar timescales with the managements, that if the current crop of management in both dugouts, but I do put them, Lincoln and Leyton Orient, in the same category. But as you've already said, Leyton Orient down in 16th, Lincoln joint top, but there's only 8 points between them. But it seems like Leyton Orient, as you touched on ahead of the ACCA show on Thursday, that they're just starting, as ever is the case with Wellens and the churn he has to deal with at the start of the season. But it feels like they're starting to pick up the results that you'd expect them to do, particularly at home.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not. Yeah, I'm just banging the drum for the same thing repeatedly. Definitely a touch of fortune there in terms of the weekend win, but Richie Wellens is a phenomenally good manager. I'm not desperately saying that he should leave Leyton Orient, but I was really, really surprised that Luton didn't go and take him. Thought he would have been the perfect fit. I hope Jack Wilshere does really well at Luton, but I just think Richie Wellens is, along with Dave Challoner, those two are being grossly underestimated by clubs higher up in terms of budget and higher up in the EFL ladder. Yeah, barely any players left from last season early in the campaign. I think Tom worked out it was only like a handful were even in the starting 11 for that opening day defeat at Huddersfield, so it takes a while. Made some good signings towards the end of the window. And he'll have them up there in the top half, and it just depends on players staying fit, how other clubs do. You wouldn't rule them out of sneaking in the top 6 again, but it is just a highly competitive division. But they're just a good team. They're just a consistently good team. They'll win some, they'll lose some, but they're not going to be struggling.
Yeah, your point on Challoner and Wellens is a really interesting one. Just reminded me of a great tweet, friend of the pod, Gab Sutton, put out. I think it was earlier today, or it might have even been yesterday, about the trend at the top of the pyramid being hiring from within, formerly good players, not so much experienced coaches. The latest example in the EFL, of course, would be Jack Wilshere, and how it's had a knockdown effect because now in League One and League Two, you've just got this pool of vastly experienced managers that just can't climb their way up the pyramid because it's not in vogue to hire managers with a real promising football league CV. It's more the trend now to get I don't know, less experienced managers who talk a good game without being disrespectful. And I suppose, Joe, that is why the quality across the board in the 3rd and 4th tier is so good, and why it's so tight, and why it's so unpredictable. I'm sure that must have had a hand in this campaign in terms of that unpredictability and the tightness of both divisions.
Yeah, I mean it has to, doesn't it? Because I mean, if you're thinking of Lee Grant, for example, then if he's being brought in as Huddersfield Town manager and they're sitting 10th at the moment, and as much experience as he's got as a coach, it's his first season as a manager, so he's going to be learning things every single week in the same way as players are. There's no way that he can be as sure of himself no matter what he says. And you've got a handful of managers that are like that. I don't think it's a huge surprise. So you look at, got the table in front of me here, and you look at the top 7 in League One, and there's Stevenage in 6th that they promoted from within with Alex Ravel, so he's in his 2nd season there, but he's not, a rookie manager per se. I suppose he was last year. But Stockport, Lincoln, Bradford, Bolton, they've got like experienced EFL managers. Michael Scubala is a very experienced coach, but he's been there for a couple of years now. Brian Barry Murphy, very experienced coach, but he also had a couple of years of experience managing Rochdale a few years ago. And then 7th is Johnny Jackson, very experienced EFL manager. So at the moment, anyway, experience in terms of both coaching and management is trumping the less experienced coaches. Luton, you can't really judge them at the moment. They're in 8th, and then Nigel Clough's getting Mansfield performing well above themselves in 9th. It's a funny one because there's been this era of thinking about like a manager's ceiling, how far they can take a team, and I definitely think it underestimates the actual ability of those coaches, that they still do improve players and improve teams. And yeah, I don't know whether this is going to be something that only lasts for a little while, that you've got all these experienced managers, or a championship club's going to start taking them. Who knows? But yeah, I don't remember a time where there seems to have been so many good experienced coaches in League One. And in terms of my club, as happy as I am to have one of our legendary players as a manager, I think if you're going to appoint somebody like that who's 34 and has very limited coaching experience, you have to give them a few years, because they're just not going to have that body of knowledge as an experienced manager does. But not every football fan or football club is willing to do that. So it is a very interesting world that we're in at the minute.
It's lovely. Right, we'll get into League Two. We'll talk about League Two for once. We haven't done it in a couple of weeks. Again, there's a few bullet points. It seems like there's a pretty distinct winner from the weekend, but I want to start with the loser. I'll dub them the loser. Bristol Rovers, Joe, lost 3-1 to Accrington. It was away, conceded inside 6 minutes, equalised on the hour, and then conceded twice late. Well, I say late, twice in the last sort of 20, 18 minutes or so, and it now means they've lost 6 on the spin in the league, having done pretty well in the autumn. I don't think they lost a game from mid-August to October, but they've now lost 6 in the league on the spin. What is going wrong for the Gas? Or can you make any sense of the Gas's poor form?
No, I mean, I was doing a bit of reading about this a few weeks ago, that the structure behind the scenes just not all being perfect over the last couple of years, and that we shouldn't be surprised that this has gradually happened. So that's as much as I can add to it, to be honest. I didn't expect this. So they've made they made a slow start, then it seemed like they were going in the right direction, and then this run that they're on is as bad as it gets, really. It really is. So, I mean, we're talking about experienced EFL managers. They've got one of the most experienced in Darryl Clark, but I can't imagine that he's overseen as poorer runs as this many times in his career. So it'll be very worrying. I mean, they're one of the favourites for promotion at the beginning of the season. Mm-hmm. This is probably one of the biggest shocks that we've seen in League Two. The specifics of it, I'd be lying if I said I was party to exactly what's going on. The only things I was reading this morning was there's a desperation to get Chris Martin back in the team, who's training with the squad at the moment, having had knee surgery in March, but Darryl Clark saying he's nowhere near fit to actually take part in a game. They're just letting him train with the squad to build up his fitness. And he's been a scourge of like plenty of EFL sides over the last literally 20 years. I'm not convinced that, a 36, 37-year-old centre forward is going to be the thing that's going to suddenly solve all their problems, which I'm assuming is what Darryl Clark was alluding to. But yeah, not good. Really not looking good.
I can't believe I forgot to mention it. There was a perfect time to mention it when we were talking about. I'm just going to take us back up to League One quickly because I think it's a
You
point
look
worth making.
really, really excited here. Like you've
No,
actually you start to go a bit red. Keep
no,
breathing.
it was just
Keep breathing. Go on.
Do you remember a few moments ago, Joe, when we was talking about Port Vale's clash with Plymouth and how it could be one of the manager's final games? I can't believe I forgot to mention what's happened at Plymouth. They've hired Derek Adams as the new director of football. Tom Cleverley said a few days ago that he doesn't consider his position to be under threat. But is that not the most obvious appointment after the weekend if they drop points? Derek Adams just to fill in at Plymouth.
That is absolutely wild. I can't believe I missed that.
I know, and we were talking about how likely it is for one of the managers to go if they don't get the result in that massive game at the foot of League One. I can't believe I forgot to mention it. That would have been the perfect time. Yeah.
Yeah, that is nuts. I'm conflicted there, to be honest, because yes, if they sacked Tom Cleverley, it does seem like it's the most obvious thing to do. But if it's for good intentions, I'm pro experienced, like experienced manager or like experienced coach going in and working alongside a very young, recently retired player. I think it's something that works really, really well. You look at like Adi Vivish working alongside Rob Edwards for the early part of this season. Like it could be massively, massively helpful. I just don't see Derek Adams as being someone that would want to be director of football. It just doesn't strike me as that. And then also what makes it even worse is that he got like rooting to have him in charge if it goes on for much longer. So it doesn't feel like a stable situation, does it, for a club that's already suffering from a lot of instability?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is not great, I don't think, for Tom Cleverley. I think he's probably secretly fuming, but what can he say?
Yeah, and just to link it back to the chat about the managers earlier on in the show, you've got Conor Hourihane. We was on about it Friday, how he is perhaps missing that experienced old head, been around the block, got all the experience in Football League management. And on the flip side of that, you look at who Jack Wilshere's brought in to help him at Luton. Chris Powell, of course. He took Charlton up as champions in League One, didn't he? That time he's got experience with England, with Sheffield Wednesday, and just having that sounding board when you're really, really new to management, I think will prove absolutely pivotal. But yeah, the timing at Plymouth is cosmic. It's perfect, isn't it? Really, and as you say, I don't know much about Adams, but I can't imagine he's took that role not with one eye on potentially stepping into the dugout. So yeah, one to keep an eye on. But back to League.
He's universally considered to be like a pretty spiky character. So in terms of like his relationship with Bradford and now that ended, saying, well, they're not going to get a better manager than me, are they? When he got sacked, and then they appointed Mark Hughes. But yeah, he doesn't. He's not built up much currency, with media and fellow managers. That's like the general reputation that he's got. Morecambe fans have got a lot of love for him. Plymouth, he got them promoted, but other managers that in a previous life, when I used to work as a football reporter up and down the country rather than doing this, there were other managers who weren't big fans of Derek Adams, let's say that, on a personal level. So when all that came out years later, the stuff with Bradford, then it wasn't a massive surprise, which is why it just doesn't feel like a very natural fit for him to be in that role where he isn't completely in charge. It feels odd to me. But who knows? Maybe he's sobered in his later years and feels like now's the time to be passing on that experience. That'd be great. I just struggle to see it.
Yeah. Back to League Two. We was originally talking about Bristol Rovers. Before we round off that, it's worth noting 60 feet on the spin. Next up for them is Cheltenham. 3 points between them. Cheltenham currently in the 23rd. They're currently occupying the second relegation slot, and then after that, Bristol Rovers host Notts County. So two informed sides. It's a tough upcoming schedule for the Gas. You wanted to talk about MK Dons. Paul Warren seems
Yeah.
to have got them warning to great effect, hasn't he?
I mean, that Bristol Rovers Cheltenham game, by the way, that's a massive game.
Massive.
Massive game in the relegation battle. It's a derby. Darrell Clark left Cheltenham less than 18 months ago. Steve Cottrell, former Bristol City manager, is the only club that he's not managed in the area is Bristol Rovers. It's got everything. Steve Cottrell and Darrell Clark, both probably managers that like to skirt the edge of what is allowed, if that makes sense. So that has got red card written all over it, that game. Probably both managers. So there'll be serious fireworks there. At the other end of the table, then MK Dons. I've been hurt here before many times, but I really do feel like this might just be it now. They're going to march their way to the League Two title. I think Saturday was a really good test for them because while Salford, they've dropped the odd surprise defeat, then they've been good for a good while now. They finished the season in really good form. It tailed off a little bit, so they didn't manage to get their just rewards, but their form was pretty good second half of the season. Especially like the last dozen games or so, and then they've been really good this season. They play like more of a progressive style of football, and if you watch any of the highlights, Salford probably look like the better footballing team. But MK Dons are just so strong in defence, so strong in midfield, and they look like a proper Paul Warne team now. So big and physical, and to just take care of Salford 2-0. Continue a really good run that they're on now, just one defeat in 6, I think it is. Then it's hard to see anybody stopping them in a division where it's characterised by inconsistency. Having a team that is built on that defensive base and strength rather than needing to play fluid football, they're going to take some stopping now.
Yeah, they are within 2 points of the top of the league. They've scored the most goals, 4th fewest conceded, so they've got the best goal difference in the division. Managerial news in the 4th tier: Newport have sacked David Hughes. The news broke in surprising circumstances, but he leaves the club rooted to the foot of the table, 3 points behind Cheltenham. Above them, they've got 11 points in total. How many are they from safety? 4 points from safety. What do you make of this decision?
I make it the decision itself. It kind of it's not a massive shock, is it? Because they're under huge pressure to get relegated out of the EFL. The fact they come out and do his post-match interview and he's like, "Oh, I'm been sacked, by the way." Basically, that is. I don't remember that being a thing previously. That was very odd. It in a very different way. It just reminded me of when Roy Hodgson had to come and do that press conference. He was like, "I don't know why I'm here, to be honest."
After Iceland.
That he resigned with that bit of paper straight after. And then the next day, he basically got forced to go do another press conference. And he's like, "I can't tell you why I'm here. I don't know why I'm here, to be honest." Whereas the opposite is David Hughes. Why is he there? He's doing his normal post-match duties after he's just been sacked. There is literally no point in him being there. So, very, very odd. It's a funny one, this, because before the season, we were looking at like all the players that Newport had signed, long-term underlying data, and just the general makeup of the squad. And you thought it's very hard to see how they don't go down. But there was a lot of positivity over them having a young up and coming coach in place. But it's just not worked. So they've been in a real battle to stay in the EFL for a good number of years now. And you feel like they're a club that if they do drop out of it, they're not going to come back in. Like the National League's so strong, so they'll do anything to try to scrape their way to safety. It'd be interesting to see who they get now. They'll usually there's a massive overcorrection, so they're going to go the opposite end of the scale and look for 55, 60-year-old experienced EFL manager who wants a job, and see whether they can galvanise something. But it comes back to the earlier point. If you're going to employ a rookie young manager, they need more than 15 games at it. They're not. It's just not enough.
Yeah. They head to Oldham on the weekend. Final talking point from League Two before we just nip into the Championship, because there's some stuff that's happened, even though there's been no Championship fixtures over the weekend. Walsall signed Kemar Roof. He came on for 15 minutes in the 2-0 home defeat against Colchester, but that is the same Kemar Roof. You might remember him from scoring 17 at Oxford back in 2015-16. He had a pretty successful spell at Leeds before going to Anderlecht and Rangers. Last seen at Derby County. He's rocked up at Walsall. What do you make of that signing?
Matt came from nowhere, actually. I'd completely forgotten about him. The biggest thing that shocked me is that he's only 32.
That's
so
nuts.
I assumed, because he had dropped off the face of the earth, I'd forgotten that he made 2 or 3 appearances for Derby last year, and I thought he must be mid-30s. But he's only 32. They can get him fit. Then there's no reason why he won't be a phenomenal player in League Two. It is only a short-term contract, so I don't know whether that is for both of them. Does he really want to be playing in League Two? So is he using it as a short-term period to get fit and then potentially get a deal in a higher division? Or are Walsall not sure whether he's going to be up to scratch because he hasn't played much football for the last 18 months and they don't want to give him a deal till the end of the season? So I think it's a really interesting one to watch, because he's a brilliant player, great turn of pace, but really, really good close control, something that you're not going to lose. He wouldn't be somebody that I would think, as he gets older, he's going to just be completely useless and lose his skill. Great strike, great close control, drifts off the side into the number 10 position. So I'm genuinely excited to see how he gets on playing for them. And Walsall, while they were, they're still doing brilliantly, but when they were picking up all those results in the first 10 games of the season especially, it was so fine margin because they weren't scoring enough goals. And if they can get Kemar Roof fit, that could make an enormous difference. And it's back home for him as well. He's from Birmingham. Yes. So, I'm fascinated. And I'm not going to lie, there's part of me that's a bit jealous as a Barnsley fan, thinking, I know we've got David McGoldrick already, who's closing in on 40. But, I'm a real Kemar Roof fan. So, I would not be surprised to see him do a really good job there. It's just nice to see that with him and Albert Adoma, Walsall are going to have two of a front three potentially pushing 100 years old combined. So, they'll move over all the youngsters.
Petitioning for half-12 kickoff so they can get to the early bird special. I think they stop at 7 p.m. Well, they want to have that wrapped up quickly. But nice little segue actually from one League Two signing from nowhere, sort of. I guess Sheffield United is what I'm trying to segue to. Has signed Patrick Bamford, free agent. Joseph, what do you make?
Yeah, they'll have been the Leeds front too, won't they? Roof and Bamford. I like Bamford up front and then Roof playing off the left in that first season under Marcelo Bielsa that ultimately ended them not being promoted. So maybe they were just chatting together and like, do you know where is there somewhere that's desperate for a club? I'll let you take this one because this is just a completely brilliant conclusion to a bromance between a manager and striker, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely that. Now, for context, Bamford started a derogatory chant. I think it was off the back of Leeds' promotion to the Premier League about Sheffield United's manager Chris Wilder. It wasn't
Not this
particularly.
promotion either. The promotion a few years ago, wasn't it? Oh, was it? No, no, it was this one. It was. Yeah, it was this one.
Yeah, they sort of had Leeds and United had a bit of not a long standing, but there was a rivalry from the Bielsa years. I remember Basham arriving when it was sort of us and them as the emergence for the title. Leeds fell away. The one season we got promoted, the following season Leeds got promoted. A bit of a ding dong affair. And Wilder does have a track record. I remember think back to Ollie McBurney. Ollie McBurney gave him some jip when he was at Swansea. Um, Swearing, just slagged him off basically. And you know the type of character Wilder is. He likes that edge. So when McBurney and now Bamford has sort of become available, he says, "You know what? I want that sort of character around the side." But it more moving away from Bamford and Wilder's track record for slagging off for signing players that have slagged him off in the past. This feels like a perfect signing for both parties. Wilder loves a focal point, or he has done in his latest stint at Sheffield United. No, his second latest stint at Sheffield United. He had Kiefer Moore. Kiefer Moore, I know it's the sort of sliding doors moment where he had that really loose touch in the playoff final. Sunderland have gone on to be a Champions League chase inside in the Premier League. United towards the lower echelons of the Championship, but Wilder really grew to love playing with a vocal point in a traditional 4-4-2. It got the best out of Tyrese Campbell. It got the best out of the side. Wilder went at the start of the season. All of his players that he loved just got moved on, and now he's come back. And the United have been lacking that vocal point. We played at Coventry with Cannon and Tyrese Campbell, and they're not the fitness between the pair isn't the best, and then we switched back to a back five, and we ultimately got pummeled. So this is a great sign of Sheffield United. Short-term deal until January, I believe, as both parties sort of assess one another, I guess. But yeah, it is timely as well with Sheffield United heading to Hillsborough on Sunday for the first Steel City derby of the campaign. But a signing I very, very much can get behind, although it has divided opinion in S2. Serial News, Swansea have parted company with Alan Sheehan. He got the job on a caretaker basis last season. Sort of Swansea, I remember when he got hired, Swansea were on the same points as Preston. Swansea, the opposite of a trumpet, I tipped to go down thinking they're in a precarious position here. Sheehan is a relatively unknown quantity. I wouldn't be surprised if they got dragged into a relegation fight. They didn't. They finished in the top half. There wasn't far off the playoffs. If there was probably another 10 games last season, they might have snuck into the playoffs. But he got the job on a permanent basis in the summer. And as sometimes is the case, Joe, once you've gone from being in a temporary charge with a clear objective, once you get it on a permanent, there's been some regression. And he has got the chop. So where are Swansea going next? They're in talk with Kim Hellberg. Is he the manager?
What do you know
Manager
about
of.
him?
I know nothing. I was
What
going
do
to
you know
throw to
about?
you.
Yeah, what do you know? What do you know about him, pal?
Absolutely zil pois. Yeah, but Swansea had a managerial change, and Borough, the man you talked about earlier, Adi Vivesh, interim boss. At least for the meantime. Could you see him stepping up? Could you see him making an immediate impact, or just prolonging Middlesbrough's good start to the season? Could you see him getting the job on a permanent basis? Are you surprised that Rob Edwards couldn't pry him away from Borough and take him to Wolves? Because it does feel like he was a big part of Edwards' success there in the early season.
Where am I going to start here then? So, I'll run through you. I'll run through your various points. Point number one is Patrick Bamford doesn't get the respect he deserves. Nowhere near. It's a funny. It was a funny love-hate relationship with Leeds United fans that whenever he was in the team, he would take an enormous amount of stick uh, online, at the ground, like out and about. And then whenever he was injured, and if Leeds weren't doing particularly well, all of a sudden he was, the best thing since sliced bread. And when he was chucked out of the squad and made to train with the kids this season, Leeds fans, rushed to his side to say that Daniel Farke was treating him really poorly, because Daniel Farke is also someone that Leeds fans don't really like, despite the fact that he's got them promoted. But Patrick Bamford does not get the respect he deserves, so it's no surprise that it splits opinion of clubs signing him. But he's a brilliant Championship striker. There's just no doubt about that. Incredibly professional in terms of the way that he looks after himself. I can't see anything other than it being a great signing for Sheffield United. It may well only be short term, because I do know that I've heard him talk about in the past potentially wanting to play Major League Soccer towards the end of his career. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was only there for a short while. The managerial changes in the Championship, then Swansea are a really interesting club for me, because if we go back over the last few years, I've just pulled this up in front of me to try to kind of go back and track it. They had a phenomenally good track record of appointing managers and then the managers being poached. So it goes back a long way, really, because even when they were in the Premier League, even if they appointed somebody and it wasn't right, they were quite good at correcting that fairly quickly. But if we just look at going back to Graham Potter being appointed as manager, this is 2018, so 7 years ago now, which I can't believe it's that long, to be honest. 7.5 years ago Graham Potter was appointed by Swansea. So they appoint Graham Potter. He does a pretty good job there. Then he's poached by Brighton. They appoint Steve Cooper, does a great job, gets them to the playoff final. Then he's poached in the end by Nottingham Forest. They appoint Russell Martin. He does a really good job as well. 2 years in charge. He gets poached by Southampton. Since then, they've completely lost the ability to find the right fit for how they want their football club to be. Because what they were doing in appointing Graham Potter was re-establishing that possession-based style of play that had been bedded in when Roberto Martinez first came in as manager 20 years ago or so. And they've really fallen away from that. They appointed Michael Duff after Russell Martin left. And it's almost like they got the recruitment model wrong for who they were appointing. He's an out-of-possession coach who only wants to have the ball 35% of the time, and they've been scrambling since then. Basically, Sheehan had his first spell as caretaker manager, then Luke Williams came in, and they gave him over a year to try and instill this style of play again, because he is that attacking manager, wants the ball all the time, but it just didn't work. They were worried they were going to get relegated. Sheehan back in, had a really good run, but as a caretaker manager, gets the job permanently, starts to tail off again, so they're getting rid of him. They need to get this one right, because they're giving somebody enough time with two-thirds of the season to go to try and instill a style of play before it's panic stations just stay in the division. But really, this all goes back to Mike Duff being the incorrect appointment 2.5 years ago. And then being unable to identify the correct replacement since then. So it just shows you what incorrect appointment can do, and the ripple effects of that, really.
Lovely. Right, that is all we've got time for on this week's edition of this week's EFL. We'll be back Thursday. Oh, God. We'll be back Thursday to try and pick a winning ACCA. Good God. But yeah, thank you, and we might see you Thursday. We're not on the best run, but we hope to see you Thursday as we try and make sense of this nuts EFL season. Catch you on the flippy flip.